You know that ex who completely shattered your confidence and left you questioning your worth? Now imagine getting an invitation to his wedding. A fancy card with a handwritten dare. I want you to see the life I always wanted. What would you do? Travis and I met in the most unremarkable way possible. Hunched over the espresso machine during the Monday morning rush at a Starbucks in downtown Chicago. I was 22, juggling college and double shifts. He was 30, drowning in student loan debt and dealing with parents buried under gambling debts. Our conversation started with gripes about customers and our sad coffee-stained uniforms. But the more we talked, the more we clicked. He had this dry sense of humor and a weary charm that just matched my chaotic energy. 2 years flew by and I finally graduated. I landed a steady remote marketing job and even managed to save enough to move out of my parents' place. Travis, on the other hand, was still stuck at home, swimming in debt, waiting for his big break. So I did what felt right at the time. I asked him to move in with me. At first, it felt like a real adult move. Sure, he couldn't afford half the rent, but I offered to cover 80%, and he'd handle the rest. Utilities were 50-50. Since he had a hands-on job with crazy hours, I figured I'd take on most of the housework. But that trade-off quickly started feeling like a full-time job for me. I cleaned, I cooked, I did the laundry, I even ironed his work shirts. All I asked was for him to take out the trash. That's it. But somehow, even that was too much for him to remember. Every single morning, that trash bin was still overflowing, and I'd end up hauling it down to the dumpster on my way to work. One weekend I had to cover for a coworker and stayed late on site. When I got home, the place looked like a frat house exploded. Dirty dishes everywhere, snack wrappers, garbage overflowing, and laundry piled up. I spent 3 hours cleaning, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't relax in a place that looked like a dump. When Travis finally walked in, he greeted me like nothing was out of place. He didn't even notice the sparkling kitchen or the bathroom that no longer smelled like a gas station. He just flopped on the couch, cracked open a beer, and turned on the game. That night, I cried myself to sleep. The painful truth hit me. I was dating a grown man who treated me like his live-in maid. The next morning, the trash was still untouched. When he asked me what was for breakfast, I snapped. I told him he could cook his own damn eggs. He called me rude. That's when I finally lost it. I listed everything I did for him and asked him what he did in return. His answer? You're overreacting. I never asked you to do any of it. I just stared at him, stunned. I had sacrificed so much for someone who didn't even notice. And for the first time in my life, I drew a line in the sand. The beginning of the end. After that explosive morning, the tension in our apartment was thick enough to cut with a knife. Travis avoided me like the plague, like the trash he still refused to take out. I stopped making him breakfast, stopped folding his laundry, stopped pretending I wasn't slowly falling apart. For the first time in our relationship, I saw him clearly, and it was not a pretty sight. I was doing the work of two people in that relationship, both emotionally and physically. Travis's contributions? He came home, grabbed a beer, plopped on the couch, and complained about his boss. That was pretty much it. One night, he walked in and saw me eating takeout straight from the box. He looked confused. "No dinner?" he asked. I didn't even look up. "Not for you." He just stood there, waiting for me to explain myself like I owed him something. I didn't. That week, I stopped cleaning anything that wasn't mine. If a dish wasn't mine, I left it. Laundry? I only washed my own clothes. Bathroom mess? Not mine, not my problem. A mountain of his laundry started growing in the corner of the bedroom. He'd rummage through it every morning, muttering curses when he couldn't find clean socks. The kitchen started to stink from his abandoned dishes. Still, I said nothing. Let him live in his own mess. At first, he probably thought it was temporary, maybe a silent protest. But after 2 weeks, he finally asked, "Are you really going to keep acting like this?" Acting like what? Like a person who deserves basic respect? Yeah, probably. He accused me of being petty, said relationships were about supporting each other. I just laughed. You think this is support? I've been your full-time maid, your chef, your laundry service, your emotional punching bag, and you couldn't even remember to take out the trash. He got defensive, claiming his job was hard and he was always tired. I reminded him that I had a job too. The only difference was, I didn't expect someone else to clean up after me like I was 12. Then I dropped the bomb. From now on, rent is 50-50. If you can't pay that, you need to find a new place. His jaw dropped. He stammered something about how unfair it was, how he was trying his best. But I was done buying his excuses. You've been using me, Travis. I see that now. and I'm done. For the first time, I saw him panic. Not because I hurt his feelings, but because I'd pulled the rug out from under him. He wasn't worried about me. He was worried about losing his free ride. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood there, calm and completely resolved, while he stared at me like I'd just flipped his world upside down. Maybe I had. And it was about time. The final cut. Travis didn't move out right away. For weeks, he hung around the apartment like a storm cloud that wouldn't clear. I stayed focused on work, on myself, on keeping my space clean and stress-free. But the silence between us, it spoke volumes. He tried little peace offerings, taking out the trash once or twice, washing a couple of dishes, even folding one of my towels. But it was all for show, temporary fixes for deep-seated damage. He was scrambling, trying to patch a sinking ship with duct tape. One night, he brought home takeout and put a box of pad thai on the table. "Thought I'd get you something," he said. I looked him dead in the eye. "You know pad thai isn't going to fix this, right?" He gave a tired chuckle, figured it was worth a shot. I didn't even touch the box. Later that week, I handed my half of the rent to our landlord, Mrs. Jenkins, and told her Travis would be paying the remaining 50%. She just nodded, no questions asked. When Travis found out, he freaked. "Why didn't you tell me first?" he barked. "I did. Weeks ago, you just didn't take me seriously." He stomped around the apartment for an hour, like a toddler denied his favorite toy. At one point, he yelled, "This isn't fair. You make more money than me, and I did more work than you in this relationship. Did you think that was fair?" His silence said everything. After that, he tried to guilt-trip me, throwing out lines like, "I thought relationships were about sacrifice, and you've changed so much since your promotion." But the truth was, I hadn't changed. I'd just stopped settling. When the rent deadline came, he barely scraped his half together. The next day, I found him sulking in the kitchen, muttering under his breath about how hard his life was. I sat down across from him. "Travis, you need to start figuring out what's next. You're not staying here forever." He looked up. "You want me gone?" "I want peace. And you standing in this space, resenting me, dragging around your bitterness, that's not peace." He didn't respond, but he didn't argue either. A few days later, I saw a Craigslist tab open on his laptop. That's when I knew he was finally taking me seriously. I thought things would calm down, that maybe we'd slowly ease into the goodbye. But instead, the storm was just beginning to rumble. Because a week later, he came home drunk, and what he said next would rip whatever was left of our relationship to shreds. The drunken confession. It was a Thursday night when Travis stumbled into the apartment, completely wasted. I was already in bed, half asleep, when I heard the key fumble in the lock, followed by the door slamming shut. I didn't get up. I knew that walk, that timing, the unmistakable stench of cheap whiskey trailing behind him. He made his way to the bedroom, flipping the light switch on like he owned the place. "Alyssa," he slurred, "we need to talk. Right now." I groaned, slowly sat up, and asked if we could talk tomorrow. He shook his head stubbornly, repeating, "Now." So I sat up, fully awake now, more annoyed than curious. "Fine," I said. "What's so urgent?" Then came the confession I never expected. "There's someone else," he said, wobbling slightly. I blinked. "Excuse me? Her name's Brianna. We met at work. She's amazing, like, real girlfriend material. Not this." He waved his hand vaguely in my direction. I just stared at him, silent. He took my silence as permission to keep going. "She's younger. Beautiful. From money. Not like you. Always working, always nagging." There it was. The real Travis. He was so caught up in his speech, he didn't even notice how detached I looked. He kept rambling. "She doesn't judge me. She gets it. She wants to be a wife. Have kids. Not like you with your career and your attitude." I finally cut in. "You're cheating on me with Brianna?" He shrugged. "I don't think we were really together anymore." The worst part? He wasn't wrong. We had become distant, more like roommates than lovers. I just hadn't expected the final blow to come like this, so shamelessly. But I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just smiled and said, "Well, I'm happy for you. Now you have a reason to move out faster." His expression twisted. "Wait, you're not upset?" "Nope," I said, grabbing my phone. "You just made this a lot easier." Travis stumbled backward. "Are you serious? That's it?" "Yeah. You want her, go be with her, but you're out by the end of the month." He tried to hit back. "You're only acting like this because of your stupid promotion. You think you're better than me now." I met his gaze head on. No, I know I deserve better than this. Than you using me and then blaming me for your failures. He just stood there, staring, like he'd never seen me before. Maybe he hadn't. That night, I locked the bedroom door behind me while he passed out on the couch. And for the first time in a long time, I slept soundly. The grand finale, the days after Travis's drunken confession, were a strange mix of relief and quiet tension. He avoided me like the plague, barely speaking unless absolutely necessary. The apartment felt like a hotel lobby, shared space, no warmth, no intimacy. Every day after work, I'd come home to find him on the couch, scrolling on his phone, barely acknowledging my presence. I didn't care. I welcomed the silence. I started making plans for my future, for a new lease without a roommate, for finally being free from this dead weight. I noticed his things slowly disappearing. A hoodie gone here, a toolbox gone there. He didn't tell me when or where he was moving, but I could tell he was inching toward the exit. The week before his move-out deadline, I came home to a surprise. Travis and Brianna sitting together on the couch. My couch. She looked like she belonged in a Vineyard Vines catalogue, wearing a smug expression that made my skin crawl. "Hope you don't mind," Travis said, not even bothering to be courteous. Figured Brianna should see the place. I didn't respond to him. Instead, I looked directly at her and offered a calm, polite, "Hey!" She didn't respond. She just looked me up and down like I was something stuck to her shoe. I bit the inside of my cheek and went straight to my room. Later, I overheard their conversation. I wasn't snooping. They weren't exactly being quiet. "You seriously dated her?" Brianna said with a sharp laugh. Travis chuckled. "Only because she paid for everything. She was dumb enough to cover my rent and take care of me. Honestly, it was a sweet deal." My heart stopped. "So you used her?" she asked. "Of course. I mean, she thought we were some power couple. I was just trying to stay afloat." He laughed again. I didn't cry. I didn't break. I just sat there, stone cold in my room, staring at the ceiling. The next morning, they were gone. Travis had taken the last of his stuff. No goodbye. No apology. And I was free. I danced around the apartment that Saturday. I deep cleaned every inch, lit my favorite candles, and ordered takeout from the Thai place around the corner. It felt like reclaiming my life. Weeks passed. I was thriving at work, sleeping better, and falling back in love with solitude. Until one day I got a message from Kelly, the mutual friend who originally introduced Travis to me. "Did you hear? Travis and Brianna are getting married." I blinked at the screen. "Wait, what?" I texted back. She sent me a link to their engagement photos, plastered all over Instagram. Matching white outfits, hand-holding on the beach. Hashtags like #ForeverStartsNow and #LuckyInLove. I stared at my phone, a mix of disbelief and disgust bubbling up. Then that same night, I checked my mail. Inside was an ornate envelope addressed to me, and within it, a wedding invitation, complete with Travis's handwriting scribbled in the corner. "I want you to see the life I always wanted." The wedding crashers. I stared at that wedding invitation like it had personally insulted me. A heavy embossed card in a pristine envelope, complete with Travis's messy handwriting in the corner. "I want you to see the life I always wanted." Who even writes something like that? It wasn't a wedding invite, it was a taunt. I sat on my couch for a long time, just thinking. At first, I was tempted to toss it in the trash. Let them have their tacky, performative fairy tale. But then, a different thought crept in, one that made me sit up a little straighter. If he wanted to flaunt his shiny new life in front of me, maybe it was time I brought a little sparkle of my own. Not revenge, not sabotage, just a little disruption. That's when I remembered Jake. Brianna's ex. We'd never met, but I remembered seeing a string of photos with him on her Instagram months ago. High school sweetheart turned college boyfriend. Cute, solid. Dumped when Travis slithered in. I pulled up Instagram and found Jake's profile in minutes. His page was public, full of travel pics, dogs, and gym selfies. Looked like he was living life. I sent him a friend request. To my surprise, he accepted within an hour. I waited a bit before sending him a message, something casual. "Hey Jake, this might sound random, but I think we have a weird connection in common. Mind if I ask you something?" He replied, "Sure, shoot." I dove in. I told him who I was, how I knew Travis, and that I'd been invited to Travis and Brianna's wedding. I didn't hold back. I told him how Travis used me for years, how Brianna had looked down on me in my own home, and how they basically treated me like stepping stones. He responded with a long message. Essay tier long. Jake confirmed everything. Brianna cheated on him with Travis. He found out the hard way. He said he'd loved her for years and was completely blindsided by how easily she tossed him aside. He even admitted he hadn't gotten full closure. I told him I had a petty plan. I wanted to bring him as my +1 to the wedding, not to ruin anything, just to let Travis know that I wasn't someone to play with. Jake didn't even hesitate. Let's do it. Over the next couple of weeks, we messaged back and forth, trading stories, laughing over our mutual ex-drama. It felt weirdly healing, like digging out the last shard of glass from a wound you'd been ignoring. As the wedding approached, I had my dress picked out. Something classy, bold, and unforgettable. Jake offered to pick me up and everything. I felt good. Strong. Ready. If Travis wanted a show, I was going to give him one. The unforgettable entrance. Jake pulled up right on time. Black suit, clean cut, and a look on his face like he belonged on a movie poster. I wore a deep emerald dress with sharp heels and a quiet, lethal kind of confidence. We looked good. We knew we looked good. When we arrived at the venue, a grand estate just outside the city, heads turned. Not because anyone recognized me, but because we looked like the kind of couple that walks in and doesn't need to explain themselves. Travis's face when he saw us, pure panic behind a forced smile. His eyes landed on Jake, and I could practically hear his thoughts scrambling. He came over fast, his voice low and tense. "What the hell is this?" "This?" I smiled. "Just a wedding guest and her +1. You invited me, remember?" He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Jake gave him a courteous nod, the kind that says, "I'm here for the cake, not the drama, but I will burn your house down if needed." Travis couldn't cause a scene. Not with the wedding about to begin. He walked off, clenching his jaw. The ceremony was as glossy as expected. Brianna made her grand entrance in a designer gown, her father walking her down the aisle with all the pomp and pride of a pageant. Her smile dimmed the moment she saw Jake seated beside me. She froze mid-step. Just for a second. But I saw it. Everyone did. The ceremony carried on. Rings exchanged. Vows spoken. Travis barely glanced at Brianna the entire time. At the reception, things really started to crack. Brianna changed into a second dress, a shimmering silver number, and re-entered the party, scanning the room. Her eyes landed on us again. She stormed over, no longer pretending. "Jake? What are you doing here?" "Came with Alyssa," he said evenly. She turned to me, her eyes sharp. "You thought this was funny?" "No," I said. "I thought you'd like the full circle moment. Closure and all." She was fuming. "Are you two together now?" Jake raised an eyebrow. "Is that your business?" She turned on her heel and asked Jake to speak with her privately. They disappeared toward the hallway. I sat back and sipped my wine, catching Travis glaring at me from the bar. He looked miserable, sweating through his tux, nervously pulling at his collar. He tried to play host, but everyone could feel something was off. Then the whispers started, people noticing the bride hadn't come back. The DJ tried to stall. Someone announced cake cutting. Still no Brianna. Finally, a bridesmaid rushed in holding a handwritten note. She looked horrified. Clearing her throat, she read, "I can't go through with this. I still love Jake. I'm sorry to everyone here." Gasps. Murmurs. Complete chaos. I watched Travis as the words hit him. He looked like a man who just watched his lottery ticket go up in flames. And I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just finished my wine. The aftermath and unexpected closure. The room fell into a stunned silence after the bridesmaid read Brianna's note. Some people laughed awkwardly, assuming it was a joke. Others looked toward Travis, hoping for some kind of explanation. But he just stood there, pale and frozen, like the rug had been ripped out from under his entire life plan. Within minutes, the guests began to scatter. The DJ stopped the music. The cake cutting was officially cancelled. Brianna's father stood in a corner, talking in hushed tones with the event planner, visibly mortified. Travis, meanwhile, was pacing around the room like a loose wire, gripping a glass of scotch he hadn't even sipped. A couple of his groomsmen approached him to offer support, but he brushed them off, clearly spiraling. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on me and Jake, who were still seated, quiet observers in the center of the storm. Travis stormed over, his face flushed with a dangerous mix of humiliation and rage. "You planned this," he hissed. I set down my wine and looked him straight in the eye. "You sent me an invite to your wedding with a personal note telling me to witness your grand life. I just RSVP'd. Jake remained silent, but alert beside me, his arms crossed casually. Travis's eyes flicked between us. "You brought him just to screw this up." "No," I said calmly. I brought him because he deserved to know the woman who left him was marrying a guy like you. What happened next was between him and Brianna. Travis was seething. She was my future. She was going to change everything. Then maybe you shouldn't have treated her like a trophy. He didn't respond. He just stood there, teeth clenched, his hands balled into fists. The best man walked over and gently pulled Travis away, whispering something about saving face. We took that as our cue. Jake and I got up, thanked the catering staff on the way out, and walked into the cool evening air. The parking lot was quiet. I let out a long exhale. Jake glanced over, half smiling. That went better than I thought. I laughed. Better? The bride ran off with her ex. That doesn't usually happen in real life. Jake looked at me. Think they'll still send out thank you cards? I burst out laughing. That night, after Jake dropped me off, I sat on my couch alone, shoes off, hair undone, sipping leftover champagne straight from the bottle. I didn't feel vindicated. Not exactly. But I felt done. Done with Travis, with his manipulation, with carrying guilt for things that were never mine to carry. It was over, not just the wedding, but all of it. Moving on. It had been 2 weeks since the wedding disaster, and my life had finally returned to normal. The silence was golden. My apartment stayed clean, my fridge was full of only the things I liked, and I no longer had to walk on eggshells or brace myself for the next emotional guilt trip. Travis was gone, physically, emotionally, and finally out of my mental real estate. Or so I thought. Saturday morning, I was in leggings and an old hoodie, sipping coffee and reading through work emails when a knock came at the door. 3 heavy bangs. I froze. No one knocks like that unless they're trying to pick a fight. I looked through the peephole. Yep. Travis. I didn't open the door. I didn't say anything. I hoped he'd leave. He didn't. He started shouting through the door. Alyssa. I know you're home. You think you can ruin my life and hide? Open the damn door. I cracked it open 2 inches, still chained. You need to leave. Not until you hear me out. I heard plenty at the wedding. His face twisted. You humiliated me. I lost everything because of you. I laughed, sharp and bitter. You lost everything because of you. You played people like pawns, and for once, it didn't work. That's not on me. He shifted his weight, his hands clenched. I quit my job, Alyssa. I had a deal lined up with Brianna's family. We were planning a new life. You destroyed it. I laughed again, sharp and bitter. You quit your job assuming you'd live off her money. Jesus, Travis. Even your manipulation is lazy. She was supposed to change my life. That's the problem. You're always looking for someone to fix you, and when they don't, you blame them. He went quiet. His expression changed. Anger melted into desperation. I've got nothing left. I gave up everything for her, and you just stood there, smirking like you won. I didn't win anything, Travis. I just escaped. There's a difference. He tried to step forward. I slammed the door. He pounded on it again, but this time I called out, I'm calling the cops if you don't walk away. He stopped. After a few seconds, I heard footsteps. Then silence. I called my landlord and had the locks changed that afternoon. I installed a door camera the next day. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and watched a movie without checking over my shoulder. I blocked Travis on every platform. I let our mutual friends know he was not to contact me again. There was no victory lap, no smug celebration. Just peace. 1 month after the wedding that never was, I got a message from Jake. He wanted to meet for lunch. He didn't say why, just that it was important. I agreed, half expecting some twist or confrontation. But when I arrived at the cafe, he wasn't alone. Brianna was with him. The same woman who once sneered at me in my own home now stood to greet me with a soft, almost nervous smile. I stayed standing, my arms crossed. Jake noticed. It's not what you think. She just wants to talk. I hesitated, then sat. Brianna leaned forward, her hands folded. I owe you an apology. A real one. She told me everything. How Travis had won her over with compliments and fake vulnerability. How he constantly painted me as bitter, clingy, and emotionally unstable. How she believed every word because she wanted to. Because it made her feel chosen. And then I met you, she said, and I was insecure. I felt threatened that you were independent, confident, and, well, free. She admitted that she saw the worst version of herself that day at the apartment, and when she saw Jake again at the wedding, something inside her cracked. It all felt wrong. She didn't love Travis. Not really. She just liked how he made her feel needed, until she realized it wasn't love, it was ego, Jake added. When we talked that day, we both realized we still had feelings. Real ones. It wasn't about getting back or causing drama. It was just clarity. They seemed genuinely happy, and for the first time, I didn't feel resentment. I felt something closer to closure. I nodded slowly. Thank you for the apology, seriously. And I hope it works out between you two. We talked for a while longer, about life, work, therapy, which we were all apparently in now, and the wildness of adult relationships. We ended the lunch with no promises of staying in touch, but with mutual respect finally restored. I went home that afternoon feeling oddly weightless, like some emotional knot had finally loosened. Closure doesn't always come with fireworks or a dramatic moment of justice. Sometimes it looks like a quiet meal, a heartfelt apology, and a clean break from the past. Travis hasn't contacted me again. I hope he never does. I moved on. I'm renovating my apartment, focusing on my career, and learning to enjoy my own company. I've stopped waiting for apologies, for vindication, for anyone to tell me I did the right thing. Because I know I did. And sometimes, that's all the closure you need. What's your story? Have you ever found the strength to walk away from a toxic relationship? What was your moment of clarity? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more content that empowers you to prioritize your worth.